we're unpacking the hidden mechanics of human behavior, drawing straight from James Clear's absolutely groundbreaking framework in Atomic Habits. If you've ever found yourself wondering why your motivation to change constantly fades, or why starting a new routine feels like, climbing a mountain, while falling back into old ones feels completely effortless, well, you are in the exact right place. We're going to systematically break down why we fail at habits, and honestly, what's more important, how to actually rewire our brains for lasting change. So let's just dive right into it.
Picture this for a second. You're standing there blowing out the candles on, say, your 30th birthday. Everyone around you is smiling and clapping. But suddenly, this really quiet realization hits you. You remember the version of yourself you pictured 10 years ago. Maybe you were healthier, speaking 2 languages, or you finally wrote that book. Now, you aren't unhappy, but you just aren't quite where you hoped you'd be. And the truly frustrating part is, you really tried. You hit the gym, you ate better, you opened up that blank document, but eventually, you just stopped. And it's not because you're lazy, it's because your efforts started to feel completely pointless. You kept slipping back because, like literally most of us, you were relying on a fundamentally flawed approach to change.
The big issue here is a fundamental misalignment between our actions and their outcomes across time. Think about it. With bad habits, like mindlessly scrolling social media or grabbing fast food, the reward is right now. It's immediate. You get that comfort instantly, and you pay the cost way later. But with good habits, the cost is entirely front-loaded. You pay the price in sweat and discipline today, but the actual reward, the healthier body or that finished manuscript, doesn't arrive until much, much later. So whenever you try to build a new habit, you're constantly forced to choose between your present self, who desperately wants comfort right this second, and your future self.
Section 1. The Plateau of Latent Potential and Why Progress Remains Invisible. So, we're all kind of wired to expect our effort and our results to just rise together in this neat, perfectly straight line. But that's simply not how compounding works. Instead, we enter what James Clear calls the Valley of Disappointment. It's this incredibly frustrating stretch where we're putting in the work, but our results look completely flat. Imagine an ice cube sitting on a table in a room cooled to -15 degrees. You slowly start heating the room. -14, -10, -5. You are actively putting in energy, but the ice cube, it looks exactly the same. Nothing is happening. But then, the room hits 0 degrees and suddenly, boom, the ice begins to melt. That final degree didn't cause all the melting by itself. It simply unlocked all the invisible energy that had been stored up from -15 degrees. When you're stuck in that valley of disappointment, your early work isn't being wasted. It is simply being stored. You're literally just waiting to cross that critical threshold. And man, once you do cross that threshold, you experience the absolute mathematical shock of compounding. I mean, getting just 1% better every day doesn't feel impressive at all. You won't even notice it in the moment. But mathematically, if you improve by just 1% every single day for a year, you don't just become a little better, you become almost 37 times better by the end of the year. 37 times! So the absolutely crucial point here is that time magnifies the margin between success and failure. It simply multiplies whatever you feed it.
Section 2. Focus on systems, not goals, and why outcomes are actually the wrong target.
To make sure we're feeding time the right actions, we need a massive paradigm shift. We have got to stop obsessing over our goals and start focusing on our systems. We've always been taught that measuring progress by our outcomes is the ultimate path to success, right? But setting a goal actually creates a really fragile system. Think about it. A goal only has 2 possible endings, success or failure. And even if you do succeed, the motivation totally vanishes the second you achieve it, which usually leads you right back to your old routines. Goals determine your destination, sure, but your habits determine your daily direction, and over time, direction will always win. James Clear summarizes this so perfectly. You do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. Seriously, let that sink in. A habit is just a single action you repeat. But your system is the entire overarching structure that makes that repetition happen. If you want to learn a language, the goal is fluency. But fluency itself doesn't teach you a single word. The system, like listening to a podcast for 5 minutes a day or practicing 10 words every morning, that is what actually gets you there.
But here's the kicker. Even the absolute best systems can fail if we don't understand the 3 layers of behavior change. This change either works from the outside in or the inside out. Layer 1 is outcomes. That's what you achieve. Layer 2 is process, what you do. And layer 3 is identity, what you believe. Most people try to tackle change from the outside in. They start with a big goal, they create a system, and then they basically just cross their fingers and hope their identity will magically catch up. But if your underlying identity doesn't actually change, it's going to act like a giant rubber band, eventually snapping you right back to your old behaviors.
Let's look at how this actually plays out in real life. An outcome focus says, I want to read. And framed like that, reading is a chore. It's this external thing that requires constant willpower. But an identity focus says, I am a reader. Once you genuinely adopt that identity, the behavior totally stops being optional. You don't wake up and ask yourself, should I read today? Because, well, readers read. It's just what they do. Your beneficial actions simply become daily proof of who you already are. True lasting change doesn't start with goals. It starts with fundamentally shifting your identity.
Moving on to Section 3, the 4 Laws of Behavior Change. This is your practical toolkit.
So, how do we actually prove this new identity to ourselves every single day? We do it by literally rewiring the neural pathways in our brains. Every single habit you have right now, whether it's good or bad, follows this exact 4-step automated cycle. First, a cue triggers your brain. That cue instantly creates a craving, which is just a desire to change your internal state. That craving then leads to a response, the actual action you take. And finally, the action delivers a reward, which satisfies that initial craving and basically tells your brain, hey, remember this loop for next time. The 4 laws of behavior change are specifically designed to let us intentionally manipulate these 4 steps.
Law number 1 targets the cue. Make it obvious. Most people think they lack motivation, but what they actually lack is awareness. Your visual environment is like this invisible hand constantly shaping your behavior. If your phone is just sitting right there on your desk, you're going to check it. If your guitar is zipped up and locked in a closet, you definitely won't play it. Designing your visual environment to make good cues glaringly obvious will always be relying on sheer willpower. Highly disciplined people don't magically resist temptation better than the rest of us. They've just organized their lives so they encounter it way less often. Here are some rapid-fire tactics to make your cues basically impossible to ignore. First, bring habits into your conscious awareness by pointing and calling them out loud or tracking them neutrally on a habit scorecard. Next, use implementation intentions. This means stating the exact time and place you'll do something. Better yet, try habit stacking. This is brilliant. You just attach a new habit directly to an old one, like saying, right after I pour my morning coffee, I will stretch for 5 minutes. Finally, enforce the rule of one space, one use. If you work in bed, your brain starts associating your mattress with stressful emails instead of sleep. Keep your context strictly separated so your environment naturally tells your brain exactly what it should be doing. Now, law number 2 tackles the craving. Make it attractive. And to understand this, we really have to talk about dopamine. We usually think of dopamine as this pleasure chemical you get after a reward, but science actually shows dopamine spikes in anticipation of a reward. It is the expectation that drives you to act. If a habit doesn't create a sense of anticipation, your brain is going to push back hard against doing it. We have to figure out how to make our good habits deeply attractive right now, not just beneficial for some distant future version of ourselves.
So how do we pull that off? One really great strategy is temptation bundling. For example, only let yourself listen to your absolute favorite podcast while you're out for a run. You're pairing a need with a want. You can also leverage human psychology by joining a group where your desired habit is simply the normal everyday behavior. As humans, we naturally copy the majority and the people we look up to. And finally, just reframe your mindset. Instead of groaning and saying, "Ugh, I have to exercise today," try telling yourself, "I get to take care of my body." It sounds simple, but when the meaning changes, the feeling changes entirely.
Okay, let's roll right into the next law, which tackles the response, make it easy. Human behavior fundamentally follows the law of least effort. If a habit requires too much friction in the moment, especially when you're exhausted after a long day, you just won't do it. But if you prime your environment to make good behaviors incredibly convenient, you completely remove the need for intense, grinding discipline. Put your gym shoes right by the front door. Pre-chop your healthy meals on Sunday. You have to make the good choice the absolute path of least resistance. And this law brings us to what's probably one of the most famous takeaways from all of this, the 2-minute rule. Whenever you start a new habit, scale it way, way down so it takes less than 2 minutes to do. Don't set out to read a whole chapter, set out to read just 1 page. Don't aim for a grueling 1-hour workout, literally just aim to tie your running shoes. Why? Because a habit must be established before it can be improved. Habits form through frequency and repetition, not extreme intensity. Mastering the simple art of just showing up is absolutely the most critical first step. Finally, law number 4 addresses the reward. Make it satisfying. This is pretty much the cardinal rule of behavior change.
What is immediately rewarded gets repeated, and what is instantly punished gets avoided. Because good habits generally only pay off in the distant future, your brain needs a compelling reason to lock in that behavior today. You basically have to manufacture a feeling of immediate success.
You can manufacture this success by making your progress highly visible. Try putting a big, bold red X on a physical wall calendar for every single day you stick to your routine. Create an immediate, small reward like transferring $5 toward a vacation fund every single time you skip ordering takeout. And look, when life inevitably gets crazy and you miss a day, you must strictly adhere to the golden rule. Never miss twice. Missing once? That's just a mistake. We're human. But missing twice? That is the start of a brand new bad habit. You've got to protect that chain of progress.
Section 4. Breaking bad habits by inverting the system. Now, what if you're actually trying to stop doing something? Well, the absolute beauty of this framework is that the exact same 4 laws can be reverse engineered to dismantle the bad behaviors that are holding you back. Instead of making the cue obvious, make it invisible. Unfollow those toxic social media accounts. Put the junk food up on the highest shelf where you can't see it. Instead of making the habit attractive, make it deeply unattractive by actively highlighting all the downsides. Make the response difficult by adding extreme friction. Literally unplug your TV and hide the remote in another room. And finally, make the reward unsatisfying by adding immediate, painful consequences. Like create a habit contract where you have to pay a friend $50 if you fail. Trust me, that stings immediately. Bad habits don't disappear just because you try harder to resist them. They fade because you engineer your system to work entirely against them.
I really want to leave you with a powerful, lingering thought today. Every single action you take is a vote for the exact type of person you wish to become. You don't need a unanimous victory to change your life. You just need a majority of the votes. By designing your environment, focusing on small daily systems instead of these massive, overwhelming goals, and fundamentally shifting your identity, you guarantee that your daily votes are cast in the right direction. So take a hard look at your routines today and ask yourself, who are you voting to become?